Evil is a matter of perspective. Do you agree with that statement? I thought about it for a bit and asked myself, is there true evil? It didn't matter how long I pondered about it, I always came to the same conclusion. It's complicated. The tricky part about it is the definition of evil, which according to the dictionary is profoundly immoral and wicked. Aside from being slightly redundant, something is only immoral from one point of view. If you see me strangling a child, you might think of me as an evil bastard, but what you don't know is how the child might have killed my family. So, who's more evil? Me or the child? I don't expect you to agree with me purely based on a theory. Let's do some practical examples via our favorite medium, video games. Don't act surprised, you knew it was gonna be Dragon Age related. The most recent addition of the roster of antagonists in Thedas might be considered evil by the fact he wants to tear down the Veil, destroy the world and bring his nation to glory. For many people in Thedas, Cori is pretty much the embodiment of evil. A magister that broke into the Golden City, unleashed both Taint and Darkspawn on the world, and in addition got turned into a Darkspawn himself. As if that wasn't enough, now he wants to conquer the world for himself and rise the winter up from the husk it now is. While he's about as pleasant to see as a well-done steak and has delusions of godhood, he's not evil from his point of view. In his eyes, he's completely justified.
I once breached the Fade in the name of another to serve the old gods of the Empire in person. I found only chaos and corruption, dead whispers. For 1,000 years I was confused, no more. I have gathered the will to return under no name but my own. To champion withered Tevinter and correct this blighted world. Beg that I succeed, for I have seen the throne of the gods, and it was empty.
It's a pretty decent summary, really, but he later goes on to say,
Did the others never return from the Black City? There is no record even of our names. We are vilified by legend. They spit on our deeds and claim we brought darkness into the world. We discovered the darkness. We claimed it as our own. Let it permeate our being.
So all the blame people throw at him is, in his eyes, unjustified. He attempted to serve his god in person, only to find out they didn't exist. He was imprisoned by the wardens and woke a couple centuries later to find his once glorious home being nothing more than a feeble husk of what he remembered. Think about it. When he walked into the Fate, the Imperium covered nearly all of Thedas, and he woke up in a world in which the Imperium was barely clinging on to their lands, even still waging war for Saharan. They already lost Olay, Ferelden, the Free Marchers, the Anderfels, only to name a few. So of course he feels justified in his quest to bring his nation back to the glory of the olden days. Doesn't matter if the arrogant peasants have to die by the thousands, as long as he can bring back the winter of his time and at the same time show everyone that the Maker is not real. You gotta be taking the piss here. How can a man that murders innocent women and then dismembers them not be evil? I hear you saying. Well, just like before, his reasons make sense in his shriveled reason. The death of a loved one is almost always traumatic for the brain, but instead of putting a dent in Quentin's, it just broke the damn thing. So what do you do when you're a gifted mage with an abundance of time and access to tomes on necromancy? You just make your own wife. Out of used parts, if necessary. A pair of arms here, some legs and a head there, slap some duct tape on there and you're set for life. Granted, a very short one in this case, but alive regardless. He doesn't see his actions as immoral, because in his mind he is creating life from death and anything goes in the name of science and love. If some random people have to die for him to fulfill his god complex and resurrect his dead wife, then that's a sacrifice he's willing to commit to. Which isn't as easy as you might think it is. After all, the man has to abduct, kill, dismember and then re-adhere entire limbs at a time. Do you know how heavy an entire torso can be? I went off topic there for a bit, didn't I? Well, in case you think I am unfit to explain what is immoral, I'll let my mate Jordan take over to explain to you why a species that literally wants to wipe out all intelligent life in the galaxy isn't evil.
The thing to keep in mind about the perspective of the Reapers is that it's actually the perspective of the Leviathan, the super apex species that created the AI we come to know as the Catalyst in Mass Effect 3. And in the perspective of the Catalyst, the Reapers are necessary to achieve a net reduction in death and suffering. The Leviathan held power over several thrall species, but they couldn't simply use their mind control abilities to totally dominate them because this would eventually wear down the minds of the other races until they were useless. So the Leviathan gave them a measure of free will to preserve them, but also to benefit from the added prowess gained by having autonomy. The problem that kept arising was that every single time any one of these species achieved technological prowess, they would create an artificial intelligence, and there would always end up being large-scale, deadly conflict between organic and synthetic life. So the Leviathan created the Catalyst to try and solve this problem, and essentially what the Catalyst concluded was that it was impossible to stop organics from creating synthetic life. There was no way it could be avoided, except to forcibly end any civilization that neared the zenith point of its existence, which is right around the point when it can create artificial intelligence, according to the Catalyst. But rather than simply destroy a species outright, the Catalyst devised a way we're still not entirely clear on, to quote-unquote harvest that species and turn it into a super intelligent collective, to turn an entire population into a Reaper. By doing this, the Catalyst felt it was repurposing life rather than simply allowing it to destroy itself. Probably the best argument you can make in favor of the Catalyst point of view is that it was trying to achieve a net reduction in total suffering and, at least from its perspective, a net reduction in death. It doesn't see harvesting organics and turning them into Reapers as death, but as repurposing. The way all those people would truly die is if left to their own devices. They would die in an endless war against their own AI that they created. I don't think the Catalyst sees itself as being good, but it certainly doesn't see itself as evil either. It really just sees itself as doing what it was made to do, and in that sense, it's pragmatic. Given how much destruction and what I would call death by any reasonable standard, I certainly count the Catalyst and Reapers as totally evil, but that would do nothing to change their own understanding of themselves.
I got one last try. After that, you're a hopeless case. So here is Jaime to give you the reasons why people in Horizon Zero Dawn aren't as evil as they seem to be.
In Horizon Zero Dawn, there are at least 3 true antagonists who, in the current time of the game and the ancient past, work against both the interests of Aloy and the world as a whole. First, and most difficult to argue, is anything but the personification of the worst of humanity is Ted Faro, a man who not only, through his own hubris and greed, destroyed the entire planet, but also damned future civilizations to ignorance and cursed to repeat the worst mistakes of the past. But if we decide to start looking at all of his crimes from his point of view, Ted Faro believed he was protecting the innocents of the New World from the sickness of what doomed humanity in the first place. Knowledge is power, and if they don't know about all of the awfulness of the extinct humans, they might have the chance to truly do things right. But honestly, that's just his narcissistic ass talking, and you can totally cut this bit out, but fuck that guy. In the present timeline of the game, we have an artificial intelligence named Hades, as well as the man who leads the Eclipse, Helis. With an AI, it's pretty easy to understand and even sympathize with Hades. Hades was created to fulfill one purpose, to wipe out the planet when called upon in order to prevent a world that might be hostile to life, so that the planet can be reset and Gaia can try again. But with Helis, we have personal reasons for hating him. We are told Helis is a brutal, killing machine and even witness his cruelty ourselves in the beginning of the game, so at first it might seem difficult to think of him as anything but a monster. However, we are given data points in the game that tell more of his story. Helis has lived most of his life believing he was a chosen servant of the sun, the god of the Karja. His violent tendencies, therefore, are necessary tools in the service of a god. He was loyal to the previous king, who he believed to be the true Sun King, which is basically the voice of their god on Earth, a king who, despite a reputation of madness, allowed Helis' wife and unborn child to be buried in a place usually reserved for kings and heroes. After the holy city of Meridian was usurped and the king murdered, Helis thought the world was now doomed to darkness. Seeing it as the best way to redeem humanity and save the world, because without the sun there can be no life, Helis is deceived into believing that in order to put the next rightful heir to the throne back in power, the only way forward is to basically bargain with the equivalent of the devil in the Karja religion. In their writings, he's called the Buried Shadow, but in reality, we have Hades manipulating the Shadow Karja in order to gain access to the Spire so that he can start the process of wiping out the planet. In return for the Spire, Hades would help Helis and the others take back Meridian, and Helis would fulfill his destiny as a true servant of the sun.
Think about it, and let me know in the comments down below. Thank you to all the amazing people that helped me with this video. Check them out, links down below. Jordan from the Exalted March, co-host of the Split the Veil podcast, and Jaime from Jaime Matt, Dragon Age trash of the best kind and hopelessly obsessed with Solas. Follow me on Twitter to stay up to date on what I'm doing in terms of videos. Like seriously, I spend most of my day on that damn site.